Now these dragons were strong and powerful, but they were also pulling this white carriage through the air. So by working very hard, he was able to flap his wings and follow through the clouds, across the landscape, across forests and hills. They went for a long, long way. But deep in the night, they came to a palace in the middle of a forest. And that palace had gardens all around it. It was the palace of Elena the Wise. And the dragons came and they landed in the garden of that palace. That garden was filled with pear trees, apple trees, fruit trees of all kinds. Elena the Wise stepped out of that carriage, went into her palace, got into her nightgown, went to her bedroom, and went to sleep. Now the soldier, in the form of a sparrow, he flew to the apple tree right outside her window, and he began to sing. And he sang all night long. And his song was moonlight, it was water, it was a long mirror twisting in the darkness like a strange rope mingled of the past and the future, of sadness and laughter and joy. Inside that song, you could hear the dust at the bottom of the sea, you could see clamshells, you could see the eyes of pelicans far off in the darkness. You could see stones glowing in the sky. It was a beautiful song. He sang this way all night long. And Elena the Wise, well, she slept pretty well, but she kept kind of waking up. This song was so beautiful, it was like somebody was poking her with roses all night long or something like that. So she awoke with a strange feeling, and she said to herself, I gotta find out what bird that is singing out there. So she gave an order to all her servants. She said, find me that bird. So they went out into the garden, all the servants, and they tried to catch the sparrow, who was the soldier, of course. And they went from tree to tree, and he darted this way and that. They could not catch him. They were not equal to the task. He was in the apple tree, the plum tree, the pear tree. He went this way and that. They could not catch him. So Elena the Wise finally said, all right, I'm going to catch this bird. And she went out into the garden, rolled up her sleeves, and she walked right to where that bird was, the sparrow, the soldier in the form of a sparrow, in a pear tree at the edge of the garden. She went closer and closer, and the soldier this time, he did not run, he did not fly away, but he stayed perched in that tree, his wings trembling slightly. And Elena the Wise came closer and closer. Here, bird, she said. Here, bird, don't move, I got you. I gotcha. And she reached out and took hold of that bird who was the soldier, held him close to herself, walked into the palace, and then put him in a golden cage in her bedroom and locked the door. Well, all that day, Elena the Wise did her magical business in her palace. And when evening came and the sun went down, she got in her carriage, and with the dragon's help, she flew through the air, and she taught the doves on that distant island. And then she returned in the middle of the night, and she went to her bedroom, and she put on her nightgown, lay down in her bed, and went to sleep. Now the soldier was there in that golden cage in the form of a sparrow. There was a fire in the fireplace there, crackling away. There was a green table in the corner with a magic book on top of it. Wow, amazing. And there was Elena the Wise, very beautiful, in her nightgown, in her bed, and the moonlight was shining through the windows there. The soldier was overcome by the beauty of that moment. He could not restrain himself. So just like that, he turned himself into a fly, and he flew out of that cage onto the floor, and stomped the floor with his little fly feet, and he turned into a soldier. But this time he was dressed in the most amazing and resplendent clothes. And then he bent down, and he kissed Elena the Wise on the forehead. As soon as he did that, he turned back into a fly, back into the cage, turned himself into a bird once again. Now, Elena the Wise, she did not awake, but she stirred a little bit. She died, what was that? Oh, and then she went back to sleep. Well, the moonlight streamed down through those windows. The scene was just as beautiful as it had been before. So once again, the soldier could not restrain himself. He turned himself into a fly, came out of that cage, down to the floor, stomped his little fly feet, turned into a soldier in resplendent clothes. And he bent down, and he kissed Elena the Wise on the cheek. And she stirred a little bit. He turned into a fly, back into the cage, and he was a bird once again. And she didn't awake, but she kind of moved a little bit. What was that? Well, still, it was a beautiful scene. So finally, for the third time, the soldier turned himself into a fly, came down, turned his little fly self into a soldier once again, resplendent in all his clothes. And he bent down, and he kissed Elena the Wise on the lips. As soon as he'd done that, he turned back into a fly, back into the cage, and became a bird once again. But this time, Elena the Wise woke up completely. She sat up in bed, and she said, something's going on here. Something's not right. She stood up, and she went to the green table in the corner of her room. There was her magic book, a big book filled with the world, it seemed, a universal book filled with all kinds of knowledge about the world, the way it works, the way it will work, the past and the future and the present moment. She turned the pages of that book, and she looked deeply into what was on those pages. And then suddenly she turned, and she looked straight at the soldier in the cage. And she said, "You're no sparrow. Come out of here this instant!" And the sparrow, who was the soldier, turned into a fly, bzzz, came down to the floor, stomped his little fly feet, became a soldier in resplendent clothes, and begged forgiveness of Elena the Wise on his hands and knees. And she said, "You miscreant, you criminal! How dare you molest me in my palace, right here in my bedroom? Off with your head, guards!" And the guards came in the door, and one big man came in. He was a giant. On his back he had a big stone, and he put the stone on the ground. And he took the soldier and pressed him against that stone, so his ear was against the cold of the granite there. And then this huge giant man took out an axe from his belt and held it up in the air, and it shone in the moonlight. And he looked at Elena the Wise, waiting for the signal to cut off the soldier's head. And it was then the soldier said, "Please, please, no, please, 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 let me sing one last song before I die." And Elena the Wise said, "One song. Well, okay, but make it quick. I got a lot of stuff to do." And so the soldier began to sing. And his song was beautiful, and it sparkled like the wing of a bird far off in the darkness. And it was like jewels in the center of a cave. And it was like a fire flickering far off on the top of a mountain, a fire that will never go out. And his song was like dew on the grasses, and it was like those grasses reaching up to the sun, but rooted in darkness, in the mystery, in the unknowing, the ignorance, the blackness, the sour night of this world which no one can ever know. And he sang, and when he was finished singing, there were tears in the eyes of Elena the Wise, and the giant, and all the guards standing there in that room. And then Elena the Wise said, "Okay, soldier, okay. I give you till dawn. If you can hide from me by dawn in a way that I cannot find you in any way, then you are wise and resourceful enough to be my husband. If not, then we will cut your head off and you will die." The soldier said, And Elena the Wise said, "Okay, scram!" And he ran out of the bedroom, into the corridor. Where was he going to go? Oh, my God, he ran down. He wasn't sure what to do. He opened the door. It was a broom closet. Nothing was in there. He walked around. Where was the door? He stumbled out into the garden outside, through the pear trees, the plum trees, through the grasses, then into the forest. What should I do? He was panicking. He walked through the forest. He ran. He thrashed around. He ended up in a swampy place in the darkness, mushrooms around. The moon shone down. He said, "Spirit, help me, spirit!" "Yes, soldier," said a voice. "I gotta hide from Elena the Wise by dawn, or else I'm a dead man. What can you do?" The spirit said, "This is no problem at all." And just like that, the spirit took on the shape of a giant blue eagle, a huge eagle. And the spirit said, "Soldier, get on my back. Everything'll be fine." So the soldier got on the back of the blue eagle, who was the spirit, and the spirit took off and flew into the sky. And he flew up and up, past the realm of the birds, into the realm of the clouds, past the realm of the clouds, into the realm of the moon, then beyond that to the realm of the stars. He circled and circled higher and higher. Now Elena the Wise did not sleep. It was the middle of the night, but she did not sleep. She paced around, and after a while, after a couple hours of flying for the blue eagle up there, she went to her bedroom, and she went to the green table in the corner where the magic book was. And she began paging through that magic book. And she looked, and then she looked up into the air, and she said, "It's no good, soldier. I know right where you are." And magically the spirit heard these words, and he said, "Oh boy, this isn't working." "You're right, it's not working," said the soldier. "She knows right where I am." Okay, calm down," said the spirit. "I'll think of something." And he flew down, away from the realm of the stars and the moon and the clouds and the birds, down to the garden, the palace garden of Elena the Wise. And he landed in that garden, in the grass. And the soldier was once again panicking. What are we going to do? And by this time, the blue light of dawn was just starting to come across the horizon, to spread itself over the horizon. The sun had not yet risen, but it was coming soon. And the soldier was very nervous, but the spirit said, hang on, here, look at me." And the soldier looked at him, and the spirit took one of his blue wings, and he tapped the soldier on the side of his head. Tap. And just like that, the soldier saw some strange things. The grass began to grow around him. It got very large. And he felt all narrow and shiny and pointy and metal-like. And he realized he'd been turned into a pin in the grass. The grass hadn't grown at all, but he was very small now in the grass. And then a little mouse came up to him, who was the spirit, and came up and took that pin, which was the soldier, in its mouth, and scurried through the grass towards the palace of Elena the Wise. Now there was a crack in the wall of this palace. So the mouse crept in through that crack and down the hallway, down this way, that way, came to the bedroom of Elena the Wise, scurried to the corner there where the green table was, and then scurried up the leg of that table into the magic book. And the spirit, in the form of a mouse, stuck the pin, which was the soldier, into the magic book. And then the mouse went down the table leg and scurried away. Well, finally the sun came up with its great silent shout, its great silent music of rainbows and light, spreading light all through the world, bringing color to all things. And Elena the Wise strode into her room, and she went to her magic book, and she began turning those pages, and she looked for that soldier, and she could not find him. Where was he? Where was that guy? She turned the pages. No, she got more and more frustrated. He's not in. I don't know where he is. I don't know where he is. She got very angry. She took hold of her magic book. She held it up, and she threw it through the air towards the fireplace, and it went spinning through the air of her room towards the fire. And as it did so, the pin, which was the soldier, fell from the magic book onto the floor. And then the magic book went into the fire, whoosh, and was incinerated in the flames of that place. And the pin turned into the soldier, who was standing before Elena the Wise in his soldier clothes, resplendent and beautiful. And she looked at him and she said, "So, perhaps you are wise and powerful. Perhaps you are worthy to be my husband. Let us be married, my dear." And that day there was a wedding in the garden of the palace of Elena the Wise. And it said that all the birds of the world came. It said that the spirit in the form of a blue eagle came. It said that many of those blue and green feathered birds came as well. It said that the osprey came, and raven, and cuckoo, and the hummingbird, and the pelican, and the penguin, all kinds of birds, the albatross, the sparrows of this world, the white doves of this world, all the birds of this world came to that wedding. And there was beautiful music there as the birds all sang their songs, sparkling and then dissolving into the air. And the magic words were said that bound together Elena the Wise and this soldier who had journeyed so far to be in that place. And I was at that wedding, and they gave me a little golden feather. And they told me if I carried that golden feather with me, it would allow me to escape from any situation I would ever find myself in. But somewhere along the way, that feather got lost. Somewhere in my luggage, I don't know, in Iowa, in New Jersey, in the Paris metro station, somewhere along the way, it got lost, and the airline lost it. I just don't have it anymore. But I do have this story for you. Like a beautiful bird, this story is. May it perch on the branches of your heart in a beautiful way. May it sing you a song. May you hear that song which is this story. May it nourish and shelter us, this story. May we learn from it. Thank you for listening to this story. Hey, all right. Thanks for listening to this podcast. What a wild story, huh? I love this story. It's really great. It's got a funky shape, this story does. It's unlike a lot of other stories I've run into. A lot of stories begin with a problem that is then later solved. Like a king and queen want a child and they don't have a child. Or, there's a mother or father missing. Or there's no money in the house. Something like that. And then that problem is solved and everything's harmonious at the end. This story doesn't begin with a problem exactly. It just begins with this amazingly resonant situation, this picture, this image of the soldier in the grass guarding a tower. And I just connect with that right away. There he is. And there's the castle far off, the castle where the king is. A king is a big word in a story. The king and the queen are usually at the center of any realm in a story world. If we're going to get Jungian and see the story as a manifestation of parts of ourselves, the king and the queen are like the center of the personality, and they're what the story's arranged around. But this story is different, and that king, forget it. It's over pretty fast. The soldier does not serve that king, or he violates his agreement with that king, we could say, right away. He just opens the door, lets the spirit out. Boom, there it is. I think this whole story, it's kind of like a record or an example of what happens when you follow a different energy from the earthly realm, the political, usual realm you're given, the king and queen. When you respond to something deeper and darker and more wild in yourself or in the world. Maybe that's what we're like, if I can go there. Maybe that's what it's like to be alive, is to be standing in the grass like that, guarding something. You live your life, you're reasonable, you have lunch, you have dinner, you go to a job, you come back. But behind you, there is an energy in a tower, and no one knows what it is, and you are guarding it, and it is not let out. Maybe that's how a lot of us live, is not to let that energy out. And we're watchful, we're on guard. Don't let the energy out. Bad things might happen. It might be an evil spirit. Bad things might happen. You might crash your car. You might lose your job. You might break up with whoever. You might, lose big money. You might get sick. Anything could happen. What is that Bruce Springsteen song? Meet me in the field behind the dynamo. Don't listen to the voices telling you not to go. They made their choices, and they will never know what it means to steal, to cheat, and to lie, what it's like to live and die. Well, that's the choice, it seems to me, the soldier makes. And he just blunders into it. It doesn't seem exactly like a passionate choice to me, but it's just he's kind of in a I don't care kind of point of view. Either he's young and he doesn't care, or he's old and he doesn't care. He's like, whatever, I was told to guard this tower, but whatever, I'll just open it up. Sure, okay, spirit, there you go. And so then this whole story becomes the record of what happens once you make that choice. And he leaves, and as often happens, things don't turn out well. It's not like immediately the gates of paradise open and everything's awesome. No, he's starving in the wilderness. Did he plan ahead? No. Did he get some cheese and bread in his bag? No. He doesn't seem that smart, actually. He just kind of was like, all right, I'll let the spirit out. Here I go. So in that way, I connect with him because he's just blundering through this story, this soldier character. And sometimes I feel like I'm blundering through, and maybe we all feel that way, perhaps, sometimes. And then after a while, he gets to the house of the spirit. And then he's set to guard a place again. So it's funny how stories work. It's like it's got something to say, this story, because it keeps going back. If it's like you're talking to someone sometimes and they like repeat something over and over again. After a while, you're like, boy, you keep mentioning the circus. Maybe you better join one. The story is like that. It's telling itself to us. And at first we've got a tower, and then we've got another place, the Palace of the Spirit, that he's guarding as well. This story has something on its mind, and it seems to me that it is enclosure and guarding and being trapped and being caught and freedom. All those things come to mind around this story. Because the soldier, he's guarding that tower, and then he's guarding this palace. But it's a different story now, because it's a spirit. He's serving a different master from an earthly king. He's serving this strange, mischievous spirit who could be evil, could be good. We don't really know exactly. And again, he fails. He fails the first time. He just lets the spirit out by choice. He fails the second time. Just he doesn't really figure it out, and they're gone out the window, the three daughters of the spirit. And that, of course, moves the story forward. And the story has all these birds in it, too. That's another thing this story is obsessed about or trying to communicate to us. Birds who are free, birds who fly. Free as a bird, we say. And so that, too, seems to be telling. It seems to be saying something, I think, about freedom and being trapped and sort of meditating on those things. Are birds really free? What is it to be free? What is it to be trapped? How do we want to be trapped if we're going to be trapped? Because the soldier is trapped again at the end. He becomes a bird in a cage. But he chooses that because he wants to follow Elena the Wise. He's entranced by her beauty and her magic and her power, probably. And he wants to be there in that cage, even though he manages to escape. Also, he becomes more magical as the story progresses. He's just a regular fellow at the beginning. He can't make a loaf of bread appear in the middle of the wilderness. But then, by the end of the story, he's able to turn himself into a fly, for example, and into a soldier with beautiful clothes on, and back into a bird. So somewhere along the line, he learned something, either from the power of that magical rug in the Palace of the Spirit, or maybe from Elena the Wise somehow. So he does grow in some way, even if at the end he's also, again, wonderfully to me, sort of blundering through and desperate and just trying to stay alive long enough to get to the next thing, whatever that is, which ends up, of course, as a marriage with him and Elena the Wise. So he gives up this earthly king in the beginning, and then through many misadventures ends up marrying a queen of the other world, perhaps the queen of all the birds, it seems to me, which is just a marvelous journey. We all end so happily, I guess. So what I connect with in this story is that wild following of some dream beyond the regular. You know, the soldier is there and the castle is there, and the castle that's the place, that's IBM, General Motors, that's Google Incorporated, Telecommunications R Us, whatever it is, that's the power structure. And he chooses not to go that route, but to just open up the spirit and let the spirit out and see what happens. It's kind of an instinctual choice on his part, it seems like. But I connect with that about this story. And I don't want to seem arrogant or grandiose, but if you push me, it's me thinking of, I chose to play music in my life. After college, I was lucky enough to go to college, and then I chose not to go the corporate route, but to move to Minnesota. I grew up in New York, went to college in Maine, then I moved to Minnesota to play rock and roll music, and ended up in lots of bars on weekdays at midnight, 1 a.m., playing to hardly anybody. And I ate peanut butter sandwiches and carrots a lot, if I remember correctly. It wasn't like everything was awesome right away, but it was a life in service to something else besides making money, besides security and the things as they are. Now, of course, I was lucky enough to have that choice, right? No question about that. I was single, free from those pressures, and able to follow my heart. But if you ask me how I connect to this story, that's how. Playing some bar in Minneapolis and writing songs and not knowing where they will lead, not knowing what they're going to come to, not having even a plan, in many ways being like that soldier, just going from your gut and in the moment saying, today I'm just going to write songs all morning because that's what I feel like doing, and not thinking about economic plans. Of course, my parents had those thoughts, and they were right to raise those questions. How are you going to support a family? How are you going to get insurance? All those questions. How's your health care? Blah, blah, blah. But I just kept writing songs and flinging them out into the void, not sure where it was leading. So that's how I connect with this story. And I love that about the soldier, that he takes that journey and follows that other energy and ends up in a place that's scarier than he imagined, but also more open to possibility. So I love that about this story, and I'd love to hear how you connect with it. Please email me if you got any thoughts about this story. And thanks for listening. And thanks to the Patreon supporters out there. Yay, you help make this thing happen. If you'd like to support this podcast in that way, you can do so on my website, jayleeming.com, JayLeeming.com. And there are more stories there as well, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. May we listen to these stories as maps. May we have the courage to follow the energies, the wild energies, as much as we can, and live in service to them. And perhaps because of that, the world might be a more harmonious place. Thank you for listening. Take care.